She called me her driver at a party I helped pay for. She introduced me as her driver at a party I helped pay for. Said it loud enough for everyone to hear. When I pulled her aside afterward, she rolled her eyes and said, "You should be grateful I even let you in." I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. I just picked up my jacket and walked out. 2 weeks later, her parents showed up at my door. Funny how you can spend years with someone and still not really know them. Or maybe the signs were always there and I just didn't want to see them. Either way, what happened last month changed everything. The story begins. I'm 32, and I'd been dating Susan, 29, for about 2 years. We met through mutual friends at a bar trivia night. She was gorgeous, confident, and had this way of making everyone gravitate toward her. I fell hard. Susan works in IT at a tech company downtown. An entry-level support role, not great pay, but she always talked like she was running the place. I'm a general contractor running my own small business. It's not glamorous, but I've built it from the ground up and made it something I'm proud of. It pays the bills, and then some. When we started dating, things were perfect. We'd spend weekends exploring the city, trying new restaurants, catching indie films at that little theater she loved. But looking back, there were always little signs that something was off. Small comments about my clothes, subtle jokes about my truck, the fact that in 2 years, she'd never once introduced me to any of her work friends. I ignored it all because I was in love. The break. About a month ago, Susan mentioned that her company was hosting a big client appreciation party at an upscale hotel downtown. She was helping organize it, and she seemed really stressed about making sure everything was perfect. One night, she casually mentioned, "Jessica from IT is bringing her boyfriend. He's a lawyer or something." "Oh, can you bring someone?" I asked, not thinking much of it. She hesitated for just a second before saying, I guess you could come. It's just a bunch of corporate people talking about boring work stuff." I could tell she wasn't thrilled by the idea. "I can help with some of the expenses if you want," I offered, knowing she'd been stressed about money lately. Her lease had gone up, and she'd been hinting that she might need to move. I ended up paying for her new dress, $450, the gift basket for her boss, $200, and other party supplies. Not a fortune, but not exactly pocket change either. The night of the party arrived. I cleaned up well, best suit, fresh haircut, the works. Susan seemed distracted when I picked her up in my truck, barely acknowledging how I looked. She just asked if I remembered the gift basket. When we arrived at the hotel, I could feel her tense up beside me. She started walking slightly ahead of me, creating distance. "Maybe you should wait in the bar," she suggested suddenly. "I need to check on some things first." "I'll just come with you," I said, trying to help out. "Maybe I can carry something." She looked annoyed, but didn't argue. As we entered the ballroom, I was impressed. Open bar, fancy appetizers circulating, mood lighting. Susan immediately spotted some colleagues and headed over, me trailing behind. "Everything looks amazing," one woman said, admiring the setup. "Who's this?" There was a long pause before Susan spoke. "This is Alex, my driver for the evening." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. 2 years together, and I was her driver? Her colleague looked confused. "Your driver?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah," Susan said, laughing a little too loudly. "He was nice enough to drop me off, but now he's actually heading out. Right, Alex?" I took a deep breath, trying not to react. I gently took her elbow and guided her a few steps away from the group. "What the hell was that about?" I asked quietly, keeping my voice level. She rolled her eyes, checking over her shoulder to make sure no one was watching. "Look, these are important people. My career is on the line here. You really should just go wait in the car or something." I reminded her quietly, "I helped pay for this party. I bought your dress." Then she said it. Her words hit me like a cold slap. "You should be grateful I even let you in." In that moment, everything became crystal clear. All those little signs, all those comments, this was who she really was. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just nodded and said, "You're right," and walked away. I retrieved my jacket, left the party, and drove home in silence. By the time I got to my place, my phone had a dozen missed calls and texts from Susan. "Where are you? Are you seriously leaving me stranded? Don't be so dramatic. You're embarrassing me." I didn't respond to any of them, just turned off my phone, opened a beer, and sat down. For the first time in a long time, I felt strangely calm. The next morning, Susan showed up at my door. She had puffy eyes like she'd been crying, but her makeup was still perfect. "What happened last night?" she demanded. "You just left me there. I had to get an Uber home." I leaned against the doorframe, not inviting her in. "You called me your driver. It was just a joke." "God, you're so sensitive," she said, her voice laced with contempt. "Those people are important to my career. I didn't want them thinking I was, dating a contractor." I finished her sentence for her. "You didn't want them to think you were dating someone beneath you." She looked slightly ashamed, but didn't apologize. "That's not what I meant. It's just complicated office politics." Then came the tears. She was good at that, crying on command. She apologized, said she was stressed about impressing her boss, promised to make it up to me, and even suggested a weekend getaway. "I love you," she said, touching my face. "You know that, right? Last night was a mistake." I let her believe I believed her. I invited her in, made her coffee, listened to her explanations and excuses. She left shortly after, seemingly convinced we were okay. The final straw. A few days later, Susan called me sounding excited. "Babe, guess what? My birthday's coming up, and I was thinking of hosting a dinner for some colleagues at that new fancy place, Antelli's." I said, "That sounds nice," but I knew what was coming next. "Yeah, but here's the thing. I'm a little short on cash this month. After that party and everything, can you help pay for it?" "Of course," I said. "How much are we talking about?" "About $1,200 for the private dining room," she said, avoiding any mention of me being invited. "I can put my card down for you," I said. "Just let me know when you need it." The next day, she came over to grab my credit card. She didn't notice that I gave her the wrong one. Later that evening, I went to Antelli's, but not inside. I took a seat at the bar with a view of the private dining room, partially concealed by a decorative divider. I watched as Susan arrived looking stunning in a new dress. She was surrounded by colleagues, and I saw the same woman from the party, the one who witnessed her call me her driver. There was also a guy I didn't recognize who kept putting his hand on Susan's back. She didn't pull away. At 9:45, the check arrived. I watched as Susan handed over my credit card with a smug smile. A few minutes later, I saw the server return, and Susan's face changed. She was texting me now. My phone buzzed. "Alex, something's wrong with your card. It's declining. Call me now." I didn't respond. Another text. "This is serious." I look like an idiot in front of everyone. I sipped my drink and watched as she frantically checked her phone, trying other cards. After 5 texts, I replied, "Look behind you." She turned, saw me, and her face drained of color. I stood up, walked over to their table, and pulled out an envelope from my jacket pocket. I spread several photos of us across the table. "I used to be her boyfriend," I said with a smile. "I paid for her dress, the gift basket, and I'm the guy she called her driver. Enjoy your dinner, Susan." Susan jumped up, grabbing my arm. "You can't just leave, at least pay the bill." I looked at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. "Fuck off," I said quietly, then turned and walked out. The aftermath. The texts and calls were relentless the next day. Susan alternated between begging for forgiveness and threatening to ruin my reputation. I blocked her number, and she showed up at my house twice. I didn't answer the door. A week later, one of her colleagues reached out. Apparently, there had been an HR investigation at her work after Susan's boss found out she'd been lying about her role and responsibilities. The guy she'd been seeing on the side distanced himself from her after the dinner. 2 weeks later, Susan's parents came to my door, apologizing for everything. They had Susan sell her designer stuff to pay me back, and they gave me a check for $925, which I appreciated, though it wasn't about the money. A new beginning. I'm dating again, cautiously. My new house feels like home and my career has taken off. I've reconnected with old hobbies and friends. I ran into Susan at a coffee shop. She's in therapy now, learning from her mistakes. I wished her well, but that's all there is to say. Some breaks are meant to happen. Some perspectives can't be unseen. Update. 1 year later. The new house is my sanctuary now. I'm thriving at work, enjoying life again, and dating someone who truly values me. Susan, on the other hand, is still trying to figure out what she's lost. Her journey is her own now. As for me, I'm finally at peace. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more stories like this.